I grew up in an age where the culture of the internet was driven and dominated by millennials or 90s kids. During the 2000s and 2010s, we saw trends and memes so cringe and unfunny that they've been all but forgotten. Trends on YouTube and the internet at large were self-purportedly random and epic. Things like mustaches, llamas, bacon, neon cat, Chuck Norris, what does the fox say, ASDF movie, how it should have ended, epic rap battles of history, epic mealtime, Smosh, Shane Dawson, the Jew Brothers, and many other once great internet tyrants who captivated the hearts and minds of teens, tweens, and children alike. During this digital reign of the millennial, their nostalgia was deemed scripture and fact because they were the majority and therefore the controlling voice of internet culture. These 90s kids' nostalgia about video games in particular spread like carefully contrived propaganda. Propagations such as Generation 1 of Pokemon being undisputedly superior to every preceding generation, or that Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo was the peak of quality and enjoyment for video games. All because that's what the ruling class of internet millennials played as children. And there were also the negative laws published, like motion controls are yucky and the Wii is a lame baby toy. Years have passed and the reign of the millennial has come to an end. Burdened by their student loans and inability to buy houses, their depressed demeanor pales in comparison to their once quirky you only live once attitudes. Instead of chattering online about Rocco's Modern Life and Dragon Ball Z, they now chatter to their therapists about their benzodiazepine intake and how their self-care routine is going. Now shadows of their former selves, they wander toxic wastelands like Reddit. Here they post to horrible subreddits such as r/Peter explain the joke and r/explain the joke about how they cannot fathom the memes and trends of today. Now is the time of the Zoomer. In the current digital climate, brain rot rules. The once goofy, ecstatic faces of millennials have been replaced with Wojaks as far as the eye can see. In the age of the Zoomer, irony is king. Irony so dense it folds in on itself like a dying star. Anything cringeworthy is either immediately exiled to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch or held up and worshipped ironically. Gen Z has been desensitized from overexposure to try not to laugh videos and Family Guy dark humor best funny moments compilations. We live in an era where humor isn't just anti-comedy, it's anti-comedy. So layered in sarcasm and cultural references that the joke blurs the line between hilarity and a cry for help. The average 4-year-old today has consumed more internet than the average millennial by the time they were 20. Anyways, Donkey Kong. As someone born between the years of 1997 and 2012, I want to see if the millennial propaganda I was force-fed about the Donkey Kong Country games is correct, or if my own nostalgia should become the new truth propagated to Gen Alpha. I grew up playing the Donkey Kong Country Returns games and didn't play the original Rareware games until I became an adult. So, how do the new games compare to the original Super Nintendo games from the perspective of someone with reverse Donkey Kong Country nostalgia? And hey, Donkey Kong Bonanza is just on the horizon, and Donkey Kong Country Returns just got an HD remake on the Switch, so let's play Tropical Freeze. Not only do I think Tropical Freeze is the best Donkey Kong game, I think it's one of the best platformers of all time. You control Donkey Kong but have the option to carry Diddy, Dixie, or Cranky on your back. Each companion gives you different platforming abilities. Diddy's jetpack hovers for a short distance, Dixie twirls her hair giving you some extra height, and Cranky bounces on his cane similar to DuckTales or Shovel Knight. Tropical Freeze's movement feels fluid while at the same time feeling very ape-like. Donkey Kong has some weight to him that you can feel as you jump, roll, pound, swing on vines, climb, throw things, and blast out of barrels. The momentum and physics in this game are excellent. You can really feel DK's weight when you turn or stop. DK controls exactly how you'd hope. Everything feels very intuitive, like jumping farther after a roll because you've built up momentum, or jumping higher by holding down A longer, or feeling some resistance when you first splash into the water, just like you would when you dive into water in real life. Everything just feels right. Tropical Freeze Freeze achieves a feeling of complete control over DK, creating an oddly immersive experience. The level design is tailored perfectly to Donkey Kong's movements and abilities, so you glide through every level fluidly. Tropical Freeze falls under the classification of game where the movement is fun in and of itself, and the game developers have designed a world that allows you to enjoy and experience every ounce of freedom and joy available to you because of the movement options. Swimming in particular feels the best out of any platformer I've played. Maybe Ori and the Will-o'-the-Wisps or Rayman Legends coming in a close second. You can paddle forward by tapping A or propel yourself forward at a sustained speed by holding down A. The X button performs a spin dash that damages enemies or launches you out of the water. Donkey Kong's animations sync up to his movements beautifully, adding to the overall feeling of fluidity. Tropical Freeze blasts past traditional methods of movement established by other platformers. The momentum, physics, and movement, in conjunction with the seamless animations, feels so good. I may as well be controlling an actual gorilla. It's difficult to put into words just how good this game feels to control and play. It's just something you have to experience for yourself. Each level is dynamic and constantly evolving, with shifting platforming options that force you to think on your feet. Like in this minecart timber mill level where you go from riding in a minecart to floating on a piece of wood in the water, and then back into a minecart, all while dodging giant buzzsaws, chopping pieces of wood, creating new paths. Or in this Ramby section where the flimsy wooden platforms are being destroyed all around you, forcing you to adapt. It kind of reminds me of that scene in The Hobbit where Gandalf and the dwarves are escaping Goblin Town by maneuvering across flimsy wooden platforms that are being destroyed around them while fighting goblins and using creative tactics to survive. I'm amazed by the creativity in some of the platforming sections. The level design in Tropical Freeze is a far cry from breaking stagnant blocks and stomping slow-moving Goombas in Super Mario Bros. In Tropical Freeze, you're avoiding falling cheese in a cave while flying on a rocket. There's an entire world where you go through the process of turning fruit into jelly cubes, juice, popsicles, and other fruit products. Each level represents a different step in the process. The fruit products and machines are used as moving platforming elements and obstacles. Tropical Freeze constantly delivers new platforming spectacles and inventive mechanics. Retro Studios achieved a colossal degree of creativity when they made this game. Even within a single level, a newly introduced platforming mechanic is expanded upon dozens of times. New ideas are introduced constantly and then amplified until every ounce of creativity has been squeezed out of an idea. Take this jelly level for example. You start out with jelly cubes that you can bounce on. It then evolves to include items embedded inside the jelly, like one of those fruit jello salads at a potluck. It evolves further with mechanisms hidden inside the jelly that switch platforms when you bounce on them. Or this level where you're in an African savanna and everything is catching fire. You have to avoid fire, hop across burning trees that turn to ash beneath you, and use water fruits to extinguish flames and clear your path. This game is platforming pleasure taken to the absolute limit. It feels like the natural evolution of the platforming greatness that began with Super Mario Bros. The physics, music, momentum, everything. It has the same core, but it's been upgraded and expanded tenfold. The variety of beautiful environments is impressive and the soundtrack is phenomenal. The music perfectly complements each setting while still capturing that classic Donkey Kong jungle vibe. Tropical Freeze is platforming at its best. So, how does an original Donkey Kong Country game stack up against Tropical Freeze? I'm playing Diddy's Kong Quest because it's the second Donkey Kong game made by Rare, just like Tropical Freeze is the second Donkey Kong game made by Retro Studios. Both of these games are also the more beloved entries in their respective series, so I thought it would be good to compare the two. In Diddy's Kong Quest, you play as Diddy and Dixie with the ability to switch between the two. Each Kong acts as a life indicator, each representing one life for a total of 2 instead of the 4 you get in Tropical Freeze. The movement feels a lot slower and more rigid compared to Tropical Freeze. Things like throwing, climbing, rolling, and stomping on enemies tend to feel smoother and freer in Tropical Freeze. Swimming feels especially limited, offering only a doggy paddle instead of the free, fluid movements of swimming like a dolphin. Now, being a little slower isn't necessarily a horrible thing. The momentum, physics, and character movements in Diddy's Kong Quest feel great for what they are. I would just describe them as bouncy compared to Tropical Freeze, which which is more glidey, if that's a word. Tropical Freeze feels like a knife cutting through butter or jelly. Diddy's Conquest feels more like dropping a golf ball on concrete. Both are satisfying activities in their own right. The animations definitely aren't as fluid as they are in Tropical Freeze due to the graphical limitations, but they look great nonetheless, especially for the time period. I definitely prefer how rolling feels in Tropical Freeze. It's easier to control and you can roll for longer stretches. In Diddy's Conquest, the roll hitbox feels a bit off. Sometimes it's unclear whether I'll actually hit the enemy or take damage. In Tropical Freeze, it's much more readable. You know exactly what you can steamroll through. In Diddy's Conquest, I'm always a little hesitant to roll because the hitbox seems to end abruptly, or maybe it's just because the roll is shorter overall. Also, when you hit an enemy, it like speeds up a little bit, which is kind of awkward. Honestly, I probably just suck at the game. Another odd aspect of rolling in Diddy's Conquest is you press Y to roll, but holding it afterward makes you run. So if you're running and you want to roll again, you have to briefly stop holding Y, which creates a small but noticeable break in momentum because the roll is slower than running. It doesn't feel as smooth compared to Tropical Freeze, where there's no run button and DK naturally builds up speed. In Tropical Freeze, the roll is faster than DK's normal run, making it the pinnacle of both speed and attack. The roll in Diddy's Conquest reminds me of Sonic games, where you're running at full speed and then suddenly hit a wall or spring that kills your momentum. The roll feels more like a nuisance than anything and lacks the smoothness of Tropical Freeze. It's comparable to the Morph Ball in Metroid games. In Super Metroid, you have to stop and press down twice to roll through tight spaces, while in Metroid Dread, it's a single button press that lets you slide under obstacles without breaking your forward momentum. All that said, smoother movement options in modern games wouldn't exist without the foundation laid by their Super Nintendo predecessors. Maybe I'm being a little harsh and dramatic. Those early designs were impressive for their time and still feel good, but the refinements in newer games like Tropical Freeze make a huge difference in how satisfying they feel. The controls in Diddy's Conquest aren't as intuitive as they are in Tropical Freeze. The Y button is overcrowded. You press Y to roll, run, pick things up, and even to hover with Dixie's hair instead of just pressing the B button again. I often find myself picking things up when I meant to roll or unable to run because Y is so crowded. I don't know why some actions weren't mapped to other available buttons. Maybe the general public just wasn't ready to press more than 2 buttons while playing a video game. Tropical Freeze encourages the use of every movement option, while Diddy's Conquest feels like it punishes you for trying. To put it more gently, Diddy's Conquest demands more calculated inputs, whereas Tropical Freeze offers freer, smoother movement. And once again, maybe, just maybe, I suck at the game. One part of Diddy's Conquest that perfectly illustrates my issues with the movement and controls is the climbing. It's noticeably slower and more restrictive compared to Tropical Freeze, and there's no dedicated button to grab and release like in Freeze. Instead, you automatically latch onto ropes by jumping onto them, and then you climb by pressing up and down. To get off, you have to reach the edge of the rope and jump while holding left or right on the D-pad. Overall, it just feels pretty clunky. It controls a lot like Donkey Kong Jr., which is a cool reference to those original games. Another issue illustrated by the rope sections is how unclear the enemy behavior can be. There's a Kremlin climbing the rope, a type of enemy you'd normally hit in the head when it's on the ground. So naturally, I assume I can do the same here. But no, touching it anywhere while climbing hurts you. Yet when I jump off the rope and land on its head, it dies. There's no clear indication that this is how you're supposed to approach this enemy. It's hard to tell with a lot of enemies if you're supposed to jump on them, throw something at them, or if they will become throwable. In Tropical Freeze, it's always pretty obvious what you can and can't do to an enemy. Penguins with horned helmets have to be defeated by rolling, penguins with rubber helmets become throwable after you jump on them, and penguins holding spears have to be jumped on. Even the fact that some barrels are on the ground and are throwable while some are in the air and unthrowable adds to everything feeling a bit unharmonious. It all feels a bit inconsistent and confusing, especially for someone who didn't grow up with this game. In Diddy's Conquest, there's no HUD on the screen, which is helpful because the field of view is a lot smaller than in Tropical Freeze. This makes it harder to anticipate what is ahead compared to Tropical Freeze, which is able to consistently shift the elements and enemies that are in front of you. The levels in Diddy's Conquest are a lot less dynamic, with enemies usually being the only thing moving. Along with the FOV being smaller, the stage direction in Diddy's Conquest isn't as clear. I found myself getting lost on the second level, but for the third and final time, I probably just suck. I will say, despite the graphical limitations, there's a great variety of beautiful settings which clearly acted as an inspiration for the newer games. Now before you dirty 90s kids crucify me for slandering your beloved game, I do acknowledge that I'm being a little dramatic. I don't hate this game, and I'm not at all saying that it's a bad game. I think it's an amazing game, in fact. The graphics, music, and gameplay are legendary. We all know that. The original Donkey Kong Country games have an unmatched charm. It's easy to see why so many millennials fell in love with them as kids. This game is the perfect breeding ground for nostalgic feels. I also think it's important to acknowledge that the Super Nintendo had definite hardware limitations compared to the Wii and Wii U. When Donkey Kong Country came out, not only was it impressive, but revolutionary. Tropical Freeze wouldn't be the amazing game it is if it didn't have such amazing games serve as its inspiration. This review wasn't meant to showcase that Diddy's Conquest is garbage compared to Tropical Freeze. If anything, Tropical Freeze's quality is a testament to the quality of the original games and just how far we've come technologically. I just wanted to give my thoughts on the rareware Donkey Kong Country games compared to the newer ones as someone who has nostalgia for the latter. So yes, obviously I am biased, but so is everybody else with everything else. It's how we view the world. We judge every new experience based off of old experiences, and we view older experiences as better because we associate them with our youthful innocence. I'm extremely excited for the new Donkey Kong Bonanza game, and it's been fun to reminisce on the evolutions in the Donkey Kong Country franchise. Donkey Kong Bonanza wouldn't be possible if not for the Retro Studios Donkey Kong games, and the Retro Studio Donkey Kong games wouldn't be the games they are if not for the rareware games. I hope Bonanza retains the core appeal of the previous games while expanding on Donkey Kong's gameplay even further.
Okay.